Psychological Commentaries on the Teaching of Gurdjieff and Ouspensky by Maurice Nicoll. Book 1. A Note on Self-Remembering. Birdlip, July 7, 1941. It is useful to make a memorandum in one's mind about what practical work means. The most important thing is self-remembering. You must try to remember yourselves at least once a day, and you must do it willingly from yourselves. All other work on oneself ultimately depends on self-remembering. Only half a minute is necessary, and even if it consists in nothing else than stopping your thoughts and trying to relax everything, it is better than nothing. Don't think about self-remembering, but do it. At first, it is best to do it at some definite time that you decide upon. The first sign that you are doing it rightly is that you have a distinct feeling of force entering you, as if something had opened in you. Immediately you feel this, stop. You must stop instantly and forget about the whole thing. Another form of self-remembering is called making inner stop in oneself. This is done in connection with self-observation. For example, you observe that you are beginning to talk in a certain mechanical way, or that you are getting annoyed with somebody, etc. You then make inner stop, as it is called, but this must be made completely, as if something were cut off. It does not matter if later on the things you were trying to stop come back. Let me say before going on that all self-observation should be accompanied by some degree of self-remembering. Remembering why you are observing yourself and feeling the presence of the work in your mind while observing yourself is a degree of self-remembering. Actually, it brings carbon-12 up to the place in the human machine at that point where the first conscious shock can be given. Next comes practical work on the centers. Let me remind you that all work means effort. Work on intellectual center. Everyone should have intellectual work of some kind. Any form of thinking that requires attention puts you into the conscious side of intellectual center, such as thinking over something you have heard and trying to recall it, reading a book that needs attention, even writing letters or doing your accounts, etc., etc. There is a saying in this work that everybody must move his brains every day. Work on emotional center. The observation and the inner separation from all sorts of subtle depressions, apart from the more obvious negative emotions, stopping imagination, working on negative states, and using your intellectual center to remember exactly what was said, apart from what you imagined. All this is work on the emotional center. Work on the moving center. Everyone in daily life should have some form of work that requires the use of moving center. Some effort of the body is necessary and must be done willingly. If you do a thing willingly, you do it from yourself. That is, you do it consciously. And everything that is done consciously is saved for you. It belongs to you. What you do unwillingly simply because you are told to do it is worse than useless. You have to tell yourself to do things. Again, if you do things mechanically, you will get no benefit for yourself. Work on instinctive center. This is not necessary at our stage because the instinctive center is far more clever than we are and knows far more than we do. But if something is wrong with the body, we must try to help the instinctive center as far as we can. Instinctive center regulates the inner work of the physical body and warns us that something is wrong, either by pain or discomfort. One of the worst things is to interfere with the work of instinctive center when there is no cause to do so. Of course, many things have been left out in this short note, but you must all try to make some memorandum of this kind and apply it during the daytime. Remember that when you cannot work on one center, then you can work on another center. Apart from your general aim, you should have more or less 3 subsidiary aims connected with the intellectual, emotional, and moving centers respectively. Concept of conscience in the work. Birdlip, July 16, 1941. Consciousness and conscience are similar in their respective spheres, one being in the intellectual center, the other in the emotional center. Consciousness is knowing altogether. Conscience is feeling altogether. Conscience. As you know, in the experiment of religion as a means of conveying teaching from conscious to sleeping humanity, one of the sources of failure is that each person sets up his own dogma as absolute truth, and so people persecute, despise, and kill each other in the name of God. They may do so very earnestly and say they act from conscience, but this is false or mechanical conscience and is formed in personality. This false or acquired conscience is not based on inner understanding. It is related to false personality and so to feeling merit, and therefore feeling that one is right and better than others, and that others who have different religious beliefs are inferior or wicked and contemptible and worthy to be killed. The difference between real conscience and mechanical or false conscience is that real conscience is the same in all men and speaks as it were the same language. Mechanical or false conscience is different in different people, according to their nationality, upbringing, customs, forms of belief, etc. If all men could awaken, real conscience would speak in them all, and they would agree with one another because it would speak in the same way to everyone. Real conscience exists in everyone, but is buried and so out of reach. Personality has grown over it, and as a result, our feelings, our sense of ourselves, has shifted to personality. Therefore, to feel altogether is impossible, and indeed would be unendurable as we are. To feel altogether would mean that we were one. But personality is divided into little bits, as it were. The fundamental thing to grasp about personality is that it is multiple. For this reason, you now feel in one way, and now in another way, but separately and not together, and without even remembering. Just as you think now in one way, then in another, or behave now in one way, and then in another. And to all this shifting kaleidoscope within you, you say I. That is, you imagine you are one person. As long as a man takes himself as one person, he will never move from where he is. To awaken to conscience, you must begin to see the contradictions in yourself. But if you try to see contradictions in yourself, taking yourself all the time as one person, you will get nowhere. Indeed, you will stand in your own way, and instead of stepping aside, will create an impossible situation. It would be just as if you believed everything you saw in front of you was a part of your body. What especially prevent a man from seeing contradictions in himself are buffers. In place of having real conscience, a man has artificial conscience and buffers. Behind everyone, there stand years and years of a wrong and stupid life, of indulgence in every kind of weakness, of sleep, of ignorance, of pretense, of lack of effort, of drifting, of shutting one's eyes, of striving to avoid unpleasant facts, of constantly lying to oneself, of abuse and blaming of others, of fault-finding, of self-justifying, of emptiness, of wrong talking, and so on. As a result, the human machine is dirty and works wrongly. Not only this, but artificial appliances have been created in it due to its wrong way of working. And however a person may wish to wake up and become another person and lead another life, these artificial appliances interfere very much with his good intentions. They are called buffers. Like the contrivances on railway carriages, their action is to lessen the shock of collision. But in the case of buffers in man, Their action is to prevent two contradictory sides of himself from coming into consciousness together. Buffers are created gradually and involuntarily by the life around us in which we are brought up. Their action is to prevent a man from feeling conscience, that is, from feeling altogether. For example, very strong buffers exist between our likes and dislikes, between our pleasant feelings towards someone and our unpleasant feelings. To break a buffer, it is necessary to observe oneself over a long period and remember how one felt and how one is feeling. That is, it is necessary to see on both sides of a buffer together, to see the contradictory sides of oneself that are separated by the buffer. Once a buffer is broken, it cannot form again. Buffers make a man's life more easy. They prevent him from feeling real conscience, but they also prevent him from developing. Inner development depends on shocks. Only shocks can lead a man out of the state he is in. When a man realizes something about himself, he suffers a shock, but the presence of buffers in him will prevent him from realizing anything, for buffers are made to lessen shocks. The more a man observes himself, the more likely will it be for him to begin to see buffers in himself. The reason is the more you observe yourselves, the more you will catch glimpses of yourselves as a whole. If you observe different moments of your lives, after a time you catch a glimpse of yourself over a period, altogether. That is, your consciousness of yourself increases. But first you must try to observe everything in yourself at a given moment. The emotional state, thoughts, sensations, intentions, posture, movements, tone of voice, facial expression, and so on. All these must be photographed together. This is full observation, and from this begin three things. 1. A new memory of oneself. 2. A complete change in the conception one previously had of oneself. 3. The development of inner taste in regard to the quality of what one is observing internally. For instance, by inner taste you can recognize that you are lying or in a negative state without difficulty, although you are justifying yourself and protesting you are not. Here the whole thing turns upon whether you possess inner sincerity or not. If not, then best to give up the work. Inner taste can be said to be the faint beginning of real conscience, because it is something that recognizes the quality of one's inner state. Self-observation and inner taste are not the same, but they may coincide. The more you understand the work, the more it is arranged rightly in your mind and its meaning seen, the more does it pass into real conscience. It is sometimes said that if we had real conscience, the work would be unnecessary, for we would know it already.